Well, hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to Thrivecast. I am Alan Wallner, the president and visionary of Conscious Branding. And Thrivecast is a series focused on you, your business, and your success. And with each episode, we focus on a topic to spark new thoughts and to generate ideas and to push the boundaries of what we know is familiar. And hopefully we may even frame up a new mindset to ignite your business forward and inspire action. And that's really important during this business climate, and it's something we're looking to strive to do. And recently, I was doing some research on customer retention, just trying to figure out kind of what's happening in this climate and what's shifting and changing. And I came across this interesting statistic. It said 92% of customers are willing to change because of a bad experience. And to me, that indicates that a customer's loyalty is not solely based on a brand name, a product, or a price even. It's their personal experience, be it good or bad, that has a significant impact on determining their loyalty to you. And so today we're going to take a look at why your customer experience and delivering high levels of customer satisfaction should be a top priority moving forward, especially 2020 and beyond. But first, I want to introduce you to our panelists. Today I have Robb Breding here. He's the founder and coach of Rev Advisory Group. And Robb works with growth-minded business leaders using a people-centric approach and a philosophy focused on improving implementation and accelerating results. Robb's love for people, business, and leadership development are at the heart of everything he does. So welcome. Good to have you here today, Robb.
Thanks, Alan. It's great to be here.
Yeah. And we have Shannon Gronemeyer. He's the VP of Operations and Technology at Service 800. And Shannon's philosophy for creating revenue growth is driven by developing a customer-centric operating culture. He believes that companies should leverage feedback collected from customers and then use that to prioritize improvements to add value to the customers. And Shannon, it's great to have you here today.
Thank you, Alan. It's my pleasure.
And then thirdly here, we have Todd Alexander. He's the owner and principal consultant at Cornerstone 3. And Todd has a passion for customer experience and works with companies to solve a variety of critical business challenges, such as sluggish growth, lack of market differentiation, and undeveloped sales systems, and helps companies deal with cultural change and team development. Todd, thanks for being here today.
Thanks, Alan. It's a pleasure.
All right. Wow, this has definitely been an interesting times here, and customer experience is a very timely topic for today's business climate. And with more business transactions happening online, over video conference, or even in a more complex, less personal way in person, especially with masks covering up smiles. It just really has changed kind of our whole way of creating experiences for our customers. So that customer experience, you know, the experience customers have and their happiness or satisfaction plays a critical role in determining their loyalty to our businesses. So with that, I'm going to ask our panelists, what do you see most companies doing wrong in terms of creating an experience for their customers today, especially in this climate? And I'm going to start with Robb and have Robb chime in and share his thoughts around that.
All right. Well, thanks, Alan. Yeah, you know, this is an interesting topic. One of the things that I like to look at is like, what type of relationship do I have, right? And I think this is where companies can really miss the mark, is misconstruing what their customer relationship is and what it looks like. And maybe the simplest way that I could kind of elaborate on that would be, I see things on a continuum, and I suppose I'm backwards, right? So it's left to right, only it's right to left. so anyway, so on one side, you've got the transactional experience, right? Where I'm just, I've got a product and service and I'm just interested in exchanging that for money. On the other side of the spectrum is this partnership that needs to be created. And I think where companies miss the mark is when they become too transactionals, are concerned too much about that and not so much about the partnership. Partnership, I think, is created by aligning the company's mission, vision, and values with what their customers' mission, vision, and values are, and then also with their employees and their vendors, and creating an environment where not only are the products and services fulfilling their needs, but they're aligning with those people. It creates high engagement with their employees and higher engagement with their customers.
So you're kind of seeing them focus more on the sale than kind of developing a relationship at all the different levels within their business, and building kind of that long-term relationship with people that
yeah, it's like their mindset about it. Yeah, like how they view it. Is it a transaction, or is it a partnership? Is it a relationship? And as some example, on one side you've got just an internet. I put wireless phone accessories because I used to have a wireless phone company. You go online and you can buy the accessory for my wholesale cost. It drives me crazy, but it's just generic, On the other hand, you might have a company like Shackley, where my wife sells this direct distribution model. And I mean, it's like a cult, you know what I mean? Like everything aligns, from customer, and so that obviously is what we want. We want that relationship, that partnership with our customers.
Sure. Yeah. That connection. Todd, I'd like to kind of hear what you have to say around that. You bring another perspective to it here.
Yeah, kind of play off what Rob said a bit. I mean, the exciting thing that I'm seeing is that, if there's, call it a silver lining or whatever it is with COVID, is so many of the clients that I'm working with are now more focused on the customer than they ever have been. And I think a lot of it's out of necessity, because they're seeing their retention numbers going down, so they're doing everything they can to generate sales out of their existing customers, but they're also looking at how can they go out and acquire new customers at this time. And so that's, I mean, for me, that's exciting that focus is going on the customer. I'd say that the three things, and you'll hear me talk a lot in terms of threes. I tend to do that, but the three things that I'm seeing out there that companies are failing to do. One is, if they haven't done the work in mapping their buyer journey, they're really struggling to really understand where are the opportunities, and if they have mapped their customer journey to whatever degree, what I'm finding is those maps, that view of the customer journey, is outdated. If they did it, if they did it prior to March, it's outdated. And I've seen some organizations where that journey is literally obsolete, because what the buyer needs, how they're buying, when they're buying, who's involved in the buying decision, all those sort of things, it's sort of gotten blown up to a certain degree, which kind of plays back to what Rob said about how they're buying, and particularly in a B2B environment, they're forced to go to virtual selling and virtual buying, and that's a whole new world. So that's one is that they're failing to really go back and evaluate that buyer journey in an intentional way. Two is what I'm finding is that they're looking at the customer experience as it's like one moment, that initial customer interaction, and they're zeroing in that one piece, but not looking across the entire continuum. And when we talk about customer experience, the operationalized customer experience, it's a start to finish. It virtually everybody in the organization touches it in some way. The front stage players, sales, customer service, so on and so forth, and the backstage ops, and so on and so forth. So that's the second thing, is that they're zeroing in on one moment and not looking at all of the thread. And then the third thing, another thing that I found is fascinating, is maybe for the first time, but definitely more often, is B2B companies are recognizing that emotion is a huge part in the buying experience. And for those of us, I'm an old guy. I mean, I've been in B2B and B2C for a long time. And for the longest time, I was always told that B2B, it's all about rational logic. And actually what I'm seeing in my clients in B2B environment is emotion is even a bigger play because there's so much more at stake and there's so much uncertainty. And if we don't recognize that as part of the customer experience and actually address it and take action to address that emotion, it's going to be tough for us to endear customers. So that would be the third thing, is they're just not recognizing that emotion plays such a huge part in the customer experience, even in a B2B environment.
Yeah, I would agree. Emotion plays a big part of it because, I mean, they have to make a good buying decision. Their job's on the line, and who wants to lose their job today? It's not a good thing. And they're working from home. They're in maybe a less comfortable environment that they're trying to work within, and it's just a lot more stress, a lot more emotion wrapped around about a large buying decision even these days, or even a small one. So yeah, emotion definitely plays a bigger role in it. I would agree on that. So Shannon, I'd like to hear your perspective.
Yeah, the environment from my perspective is super interesting right now, and Rob and Todd both mentioned this. I think you're seeing companies go one of two different directions. Either they're doubling down on the need to be more intimate with their customers and develop stronger relationships so they come out of this stronger than they went in, or they're really focused on the cost side of the equation and how do I readjust my balance sheet based on the realities of the revenue stream. And so it's fun to see the innovation that some companies are putting into place to be more connected to their customers. But regardless of the path you go down, there's a couple of things that jumped out at me in terms of what I see people doing wrong, whether they're focused on cost or improving experience. One is self-service and the movement towards increasing self-service for our customers. And what's interesting about that for me is it's the intent matters. Why am I driving self-service? Is it to push off the workload that my team normally does for the customer in order to save money and put that in the lap of my customer to have to do? Or am I actually trying to create a method of them doing business with me that's how they want to do business with me? There's nothing wrong with self-service, but the customer should choose when they're serving themselves and when they want to talk to somebody and want to be cared for. So it's one of those things that, number one, I think a customer needs to have a choice. We shouldn't force our customers down a single channel, like everything's online now and you can't talk to an agent anymore. And when we do give them that option, it needs to add value. I mean, you don't force your customers to move from one channel to another. You make the other channel so attractive that that's how they migrate. And so I think because of the cost reductions that we've seen, there's been a forced movement towards customer experience online, and that's not always a positive thing. The second one for me is how companies are trying to manage challenges or problems or service issues with either their service or their product. And there's a really interesting study that I just love to tout that came out from Purdue several years ago. And what the study found was that if I bought a product and I had absolutely no problems with the product, I had a 78% chance of repurchasing. If I had a product and there was something wrong with it and I called customer experience and had a poor experience getting my issue resolved, I had a 32% chance of repurchase. If I bought a product and had a problem, but a great service experience getting it resolved, I had an 89% chance of repurchase. So my repurchase rate with a product problem and a good solution was better than if I didn't have a problem in the first place. So it's all about this relationship we create with our customers in resolving problems. You don't get a chance to create a relationship if everything goes smoothly, everything's online, and they have no reason to reach out to you. And the second part of that is, I think everyone's experienced this. You have a problem. You try to get resolution. The agents have no empowerment to solve your problem, and they adhere to a strict set of rules and guidelines. You finally escalate, and a manager gives you what you were looking for, but by now it doesn't matter anymore if you're still upset. You got exactly what you wanted, but the experience is still awful because it wasn't resolved the first time. So it's the way the agents manage the experience and the focus on providing good solutions and building relationships, I think is something a lot of people miss.
Yeah, and just making it as streamlined as possible. Whereas if you got to come in through the phone and there's this long method of going from pushing one button, answering another question, another button, and then being put on hold once you get there. And that's a good way to start losing business.
That's right.
But yeah, definitely, I believe that Now with everything becoming more automated, yes, it helps. The intention is to streamline things, but is the intention, you have to really balance that with the customer, the intention around the customer. Is it going to make their experience better or not?
Yep.
So yeah, I think it's really important. So, all right, well, you know, many people think of their brand as their logo. And in reality, the perception people have of you, have of end of your business is based on a perception that they have of you based on the experiences you create for them. So that really makes your customer experience really important. And so from that initial awareness to the stage of being loyal, there's so many variables in there. How do you ensure that your customer's experience with your company is a positive one? And that's, you know, awareness to loyalty, all the variables. With that, I think I'm gonna check in with Todd and see if I can have you give us some thoughts around that.
Yeah, I mean, that is the challenge, right?
Yeah.
I think you hit on it. And there was something that Shannon said that kind of resonated with me, and that is just stopping and taking the time to, why are we doing what we're doing? And I just, that is spot on. I think there's, you know, it's there, what I'm seeing, particularly in the first few months, you know, March, April, May, is there was so much there, although the companies I was working with, they saw the revenue dropping off, so on and so forth, and this mad scramble and working on PPP and so on and so forth. And early on, although there was this belief that we needed to have the connection with the customer in a lot of these different companies, it was so much about us and not about the customer. And that sounds so obvious, but what I'm finding is even pre-COVID is that cultural shift, that going from, you know, shift from internal to external thinking, external looking externally and then bringing that internally is so important. And I think back to something that happened early in COVID where so many sales teams and sales reps didn't know what sort of conversation they were supposed to have with a customer. What do I do now? What am I supposed to say? And I remember being in these different coaching conversations and really concluding, what if you were to just simply demonstrate empathy, at least at this stage, and reach out to customers, prospects, and just basically be there just to see how they're doing. And what was fascinating to me is the conversations that came out of that and that connection that occurred. Now we've kind of moved out of that to some degree into now, I believe, as part of the customer experience, we're trying to help customers sort of make sense of what's going on. And because in some organizations, they've been totally disrupted. They don't even know how to make decisions because they're being spread thin, or they've got this coming at them, or whatever it may be. So where I'm going with it is the experience we're creating now is shifted from kind of, you know, we just want it to be a pleasurable experience and no hassle, to know we need to be there to help them make sense of it. As part of that, the other thing that I'm seeing, and this gets back kind of your fundamental question, Alan, is what can we be doing to create that positive experience and tie it back to the brand, is the companies that I see that are creating a really positive experience have made this shift where the customer is the hero. And that seems so simple and obvious, but I feel like for a long time that we've operated that if we as the sellers show up as the hero, we're going to earn their business. And where does that leave the customer? And the shift is where the customer is the hero, and that everybody in our organization looks at the customer as the hero, and it's really our role as the guide. I'm a big fan of Donald Miller and Story Brand,
Yeah, he's good.
And what's amazing is when I've seen companies adopt that, and that sort of thinking, it goes all the way back into the culture, and it starts to resonate with every employee in the organization that, oh yeah, that's what we're here for. That's our mission, is to help the customer be the hero. So how can I do that? Whatever role I may have. So it sort of starts with that understanding, then shifting to the, changing the brand to where the customer is a hero, and then making it cultural. I mean, I'd see that as sort of the connection to ultimately creating a positive customer experience.
Sure. Yeah. And then even tied into what you said with answering the earlier question with the buyer's journey, just kind of start rolling that all together, the buyer's journey, along with how do you keep them in the hero role and you as the guide and the helper role to achieve the best journey possible. What's that?
It grounds it into the organization with the journey. Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of create a whole culture around it then.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely.
Agree more.
Yeah. Hey, Shannon, I'd like to kind of hear your perspective around this.
Yeah, I think Todd's absolutely right. I've always held this fundamental belief that businesses only exist to solve some need for their customers and to do it better than anybody else can. Everything else is window dressing. That's why we're here. And in times like this, we can get really distracted by everything else going on around us in our own business and the culture and the news, et cetera. And, in terms of what do I need to do to create a positive experience, I think I use the same answer for a lot of questions. Ask your customers. It's always amazing to me how infrequently some companies talk to their customers to find out what they want, what they need, what problem they're trying to solve. How do I solve that problem compared to my competitors or others out there? And so I think it starts with taking this time that you might have to become much more intimate with your customers. What is going on in their lives? What are they trying to accomplish? What do they need to do? What do they want to feel like when they do business with you? What do they want that experience to be like? I think, Alan, you said earlier that a lot of decisions are based emotionally, and I think some of the research shows up to 90% of the decisions we make are emotionally based. And our customers are no different. They're making decisions based on emotions and feelings too. So what kind of feeling do you want to create in them? What kind of experience do you want to create for them? If that much of their decision process is based on how you make them feel, we should probably be more focused on that. And so how do I design an experience that elicits the emotions, the feelings that I want with my customers? And if I can do that, my business will thrive. Everything else will come along.
Yeah, I really like, ask the customer, because at the end of the day, that's why you're there.
Yeah.
And if you can get on that more personal level with them, it's amazing what they're going to tell you. I mean, they'll open up and share all kinds of things, give you all kinds of ideas, and almost kind of becomes a cheat sheet on how to ensure they're a good customer experience with them.
Yeah, it's almost a cheat sheet. If you ask customers the right questions, they'll tell you what to do, and they'll tell you what they'll do in return for you doing that. It's almost like them leading you.
Yeah. So definitely have that dialogue. I think the dialogue is, it gets missed a lot, but that is key to everything here. And I think that's a good way to better understand their emotions as well, too. Robb, I'd like to hear your perspective around all this.
Yeah, this is great. Todd started off talking about the hero, and now we're talking about having this interaction with the customer. I think that would play really well with what I would add, and that is that I think increasing the kind of the collective EQ of the organization. So I think I heard Shannon say, we need to put a process in place to gather that information, and we map it out. And I think where I come at it, maybe not differently necessarily, but the idea is that the very people inside of our organizations need to execute this, and they need to be able to do that for us. And so I think there's some real benefit in terms of ensuring that we create that positive experience ongoing, in educating and bringing the level of EQ up in the individual people that populate our organization, and of course collectively then as a company. In my coaching, there's an instrument that we use, and Alan, you didn't ask the question this way, but you used the terms, thinking, doing, and feeling, and to me, and in one of the devices that we use, it gets at the person that way. Okay. So at the high level is the thinking piece, and then it's the doing. And then at the very deep level, as you guys have been talking about, is the emotional level. And that's really where the connection is made. And I don't have the statistics like Shannon from the Purdue study, but I know back at Sears back in the day, we used to talk about that all the time. Man, if we could just have a customer to have a problem, we could solidify that relationship if we could just solve it correctly. And so training our people to be empathetic and not only understanding themselves and their customers, but being able to learn to regulate that situation. That's what emotional intelligence is. And I think that's just such a critical competency. You know, you mentioned I'm a people-centric coach, and I mean, that to me is the difference between having a good plan and being able to execute it. So.
Yeah, and you hit on a key thing here, you know, emotional intelligence. And I mean, everyone's emotional intelligence is kind of being put to the test these days with what's going on. A lot of stress, and people aren't being able to work together in a culture. They're all separated, working remotely. So, you know, we've all talked about emotion, talking with the customers, really understanding their world, think, feeling, and doing, and all that stuff. But how do you, with all the external stresses kind of canceling out your culture, how do you know, what are some things you can put into place to kind of help hold this thing together that seems to be becoming very fragile these days based on everything that's going on? And I guess I'm going to kind of, I'll throw that back to you, Rob.
Okay. Yeah. Well, obviously just being intentional and aware, I think Todd, that's been a theme Todd's been saying, you know, is that just being more focused and I know for my clients, they have been very concerned about their people. You know what I mean? That has been a major concern. And I think that has in some ways distracted it from the customer, right? But I think that is the key is just like we need to prioritize our, you know, relationships in our culture in order to make sure that it's functioning properly, and that our competency level is there and that people are okay. Because if they're not okay, I mean, engagement with employees goes down, and with customers, it's going to follow, if you ask me. So.
Sure. Yeah. I guess I want to kind of open that up to maybe Shannon too, and see what your thoughts are around that.
Yeah, we used to do a lecture or speech on the relationship between employee experience and customer experience, and we talked about this downward spiral that exists. So if you can't be conscious of one and not the other. If you create a bad experience for your employees, now they get on the phone, they're upset, disgruntled, unhappy. They talk to a client who has a problem. The client's getting less than positive reaction, and so now the client's upset. And now the employee's thinking, boy, this place sucks, and this person's yelling at me. And you just kind of get this downward spiral of experience. And so I think one is the front line for your customers. Those folks have to be in it with you. They have to be happy to be there. They have to be motivated. They have to be directed by the vision that you've cast with them. And they have to understand, you need to create a culture that understands the importance of what they're doing with their customer. I mean, these are the people that are writing our checks. This is our livelihood. And that agent sitting wherever they are in the world can have a dramatic impact on the performance of our company. And so for them to feel a part of it, and the part of digging us out of the business disruption we're in today, I think it can be motivating, but it's got to be led.
Yeah, definitely. Todd, I'm curious to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if what I'm about to say is that much different from what Shannon and Rob said, but
okay,
that brings me to a conversation I just had in a client meeting yesterday, where we were looking at strategy, we were looking at resources required, communication, all those kind of things, and a lot of obviously anxiety. Ton of anxiety in the room around where's the organization is going to go, do we have the right skills, how are people going to be engaged, so on and so forth. And the leader made a really profound comment, and she said, it's our responsibility as the leadership team to provide our employees enough information on an ongoing basis through this whole COVID and so on and so forth, to where they can make really good decisions or make decisions for themselves. And that seems sort of obvious, but what I think what had happened is they've gotten away from regular communication, which I think is picking up on what Shannon had said there, and for that matter, Rob, is that connection to the employees and keeping those lines of communication open, even if we don't know exactly what's going to happen and we're uncertain, to be able to actually, here's what we do know, and to be thinking about what information can we provide them, our employees, where they can make those choices and those decisions for themselves, sort of meet them where they're at, as opposed to them trying to meet us where we're at. And that, again, that's another, for me, that's a silver lining, because culture is so important, is I'm seeing more and more companies being very intentional about communication. And whether it's one-to-one or in a group, or it's a weekly update or whatever it may be, to me, that's inspiring, because people are recognizing they have to keep their employees connected and aligned and you know, as ambitious as possible. So, I mean, that would be my only comments on it, Alan.
Sure.
Yeah, and just to reinforce what Todd just said, Alan, I met with a business consultant last night. She does sales leadership consulting, very good at what she does. And she gave me this story, kind of two different worlds. She described two customers of hers. They're both financial institutions, both banks of similar sizes. And one of them has a leader that says, this is an amazing time for us to transform the way we serve our customers and the products we offer. And when she talks to the lower level sales leaders, they're really jazzed up. We're going to take the market at this time. We're going to take share from our competitors. We're going to win. And then she goes to the other bank and they're all about, oh, this is an awful environment. It's, you know, the market's down and people aren't spending money. And when you talk to lower level employees there, you feel that doom and gloom. And it's all about the direction the leadership set in the environment. It's 180 degrees apart.
And that direction typically comes from understanding that customer journey or the buyer's journey and having that dialogue. And that's the way I understand it. And so when you go and put together these customer journeys and buyer journeys, you kind of have the awareness to loyalty. You also have your sales or your marketing and sales. And companies tend to keep marketing and sales separate, even awareness and loyalty separate. Do you guys see this as a time to really explore maybe integrating that a little bit more and just really rounding out a more holistic approach to the experience, the customer experience? And with that, I'm going to start with you, Shannon.
Yeah, I guess the first response I'd have to that is I worked with a partner once who used the phrase customer experience as a team sport, and I really like that. Everyone in the business has an impact on the customer directly or indirectly. And that's the way we need to approach how we collaborate and coordinate as we're supporting customers. I mean, the great example for me in the disconnect between sales and marketing and the rest of the organization can be, I can establish a brand image with my marketing that my sales team thinks is unrealistic and has to work around that when they're in the field, and the image doesn't really line up with what my customers want. So I have to sell a little bit differently, only to have my customer experience organization deliver a different experience than I either promoted from a marketing perspective or committed to from a sales perspective. So that disconnect between who I tell people I am and what they actually experience when they make the first phone call into the business can be huge at times. And so as an organization, again, it's all about designing the experience a client's going to have as they go through their journey. And those things all have to be aligned. They can't be done in individual silos. I can't hand the customer off to the next organization without having collaborated with them on what that experience handoff is supposed to look like and how the customer is supposed to be treated fair. So it's got to be all part of the same ecosystem. You know, I can't say that I'm an expert in the industry and you call a very inexperienced tech support person and have to go 3 levels of support before you get help. You can't say I'm your partner and but I'm going to transfer you overseas to my call center when you can't really understand them. You can't say, we know you, we care about you, and then I asked you to give me your credit card 6 times before I can solve your problem, right? So these things all have to be lined up around the the experience you want to design.
Yes, definitely. You know, and it's the you know, overselling and you know, or over promising and underselling or under delivering. You gotta make sure that everyone understands the whole journey and kind of what you're all doing together. Otherwise, you can fail on that.
I would just want to jump into Alan, if it's okay. On top of that, I couldn't agree more with what Shannon just said. I hate silos. And rather than reiterate what he's saying, I think, you know, on the practical side, I love Patrick Lencioni in terms of teamwork. You mentioned the word team right at the beginning. And what you need to have is you need to have trust. But at the second level, it's this ability to carry on a debate, to get people to buy in. And what you said is so true. You know, sales and marketing aren't aligned, and I would add to a customer service and delivery. And so if we can get these folks together and out of these silos and come up with a strategy, guess what? They're going to execute it way better. And I would include, you could include the customer, right? Like you said, Alan, or Todd was saying at the beginning, we need to even include them in the dialogue and how it should look. And so anyway, I'm just huge on that. I mean, when collaboration is done well, the results are just exponentially better. And I think companies need to pay attention to that.
Right, I agree. And then everyone knows what the intention is, and everyone's working together to create the same thing.
Yeah, and you know, could I also add, because my clients tell me this, they don't want to do it. You know why? Because it takes time. Right? Yeah. You know what I mean? If you're a CEO, you're a high D, okay? You're a driver, and you just want to ram it down. You know, you just want to get something done. And collaboration is a little slower process, but I think the results in important things like this, like we're discussing, can be that much greater.
Yeah, to some degree, it's like that old saying, stepping over dollars to pick up dimes.
Yeah, well, I just think sometimes we get in a hurry.
Yeah, and you miss streamlining or other opportunities to make it even better.
Yeah, and engaging with these people takes a little time. You know, getting people together to collaborate and fight about it a little bit before you do something. Another favorite saying I'll tell you is John Perry. He passed away this last year, was my first mentor as a consultant. And he would say, you know, people don't have to get their way, but they want to have their say. And so that's, you know, getting the customer to have their say, getting the customer service and marketing and sales to all have their say, and developing a system out of that is the best approach.
Yeah, really understanding the empathy with the client, what they think, feel, do, and what they're going to say. You know, all of that's very important. So Todd, I'd like to kind of get your perspective on this too.
Yeah, my foot was thumping a little bit when Shannon and Rob were talking, so I'll just kind of, I'm going to sound like, I'm probably going to sound, Shannon, like the example of the sales leader who was really optimistic, right? And who knows, I'll probably get emails after this, like, why do you start each thing by saying, wow, what's really good about COVID is, here's the thing. I believe that what's been awesome about the last few months has been this emergence of virtual selling, and this plays directly to your question, Al. And with virtual selling, which includes video conferencing, email, text, social media, your website, all these different touch points that are blended together. And if there was ever a time where we needed collaboration between marketing and sales, and to Rob's point, marketing, sales, and customer service, add IT in there, and who am I missing? I mean, the collaboration required to really pull off high-end virtual selling in all the different means I just mentioned, absolutely. To do it, you have to have collaboration, which I've seen amazing is I'm seeing salespeople going in and having conversations, to Rob's point, conversations with marketing that they've never had, marketing having conversations with sales, working together against or to enable the customer journey, but doing it in a virtual selling environment. And marketing and tech and IT are helping sales do that, and then provide, and then now also more than ever, we have the catalyst for CRM to really take hold, because we need that data to be able to communicate with all three of those like never before. So yeah, I think we're at one of those amazing inflection points where we have an opportunity to bring all those functions together to create an experience for the customer that's they've never had before. I find one statistic that I'm going to throw out that I just read recently is that the first statistic is pretty obvious. So within the past 3, 4, 5 months, I think 95% of B2B companies have switched to virtual selling. Okay, that's pretty obvious. The more fascinating statistic in there is that 65% of the buyers in that study said that the experience in virtual selling was as good, if not better, than before. Well, there's something there that we have an opportunity to capitalize on, and it's going to require that collaboration that Shannon mentioned, Robb mentioned, Alan, you get on the front end. It's critical. We're going to have to come together in a congruent way to work together to deliver that experience in this virtual environment. Not to say that face-to-face is not coming back. That's just going to be icing on the cake, but we've got to master this whole other new way of showing up in the marketplace.
Yeah, I'd like to hear what Shannon has to say around that too, because I've also heard some people saying, well, yeah, you can close a sale for a $50 sale online, but when you're talking a $13,000 or $50,000 sale on virtually, that's a different story. So I'm curious to know, Shannon, based on kind of what you heard Todd talking about, what's your perspective on that? Is it the same thing or is it different?
Well, I think the good news is we've all been thrust into this virtual world. Buyers and sellers are all in the virtual world right now. So buyers still have need. They still have problems that need to be solved. And so it's not as if the sellers have tried to go virtual overnight while buyers expect to still see people in person, right? We're all in the same boat together. So we're all making that journey. What I think is really interesting though, I think back to my days working for the telephone company, and we've had video conferencing around for 20 years now. And the story has always been, you can't sell over the phone. You can't sell virtually. You've got to go shake a hand, kiss a baby, buy a beer, play a round of golf. That's the only way that sales can get done. And I think companies are starting to realize now the technology is so great. I can have a really meaningful, intimate conversation with someone virtually over a video conference. And it saves both of us time. I'm probably more focused than I was when we met in person. And I think, to Todd's point, there's a magic that's being created here around virtual selling. And remember too, in the buying environment these days, the role of the seller has really changed. The seller used to have to educate the buyer, and now the buyer is usually pretty educated before the seller ever gets to them. Mm-hmm. And so now I can kind of pinpoint that contact in a very efficient and effective way. And as a seller, I can reach more people. So I could even make more money in a virtual environment. So I agree with Todd. There's something really magical that could happen out of this that drives efficiency and effectiveness in our sales organizations.
Yeah, and you're starting to see it in a couple of new innovations that are coming out. So it's going to get really interesting to see how it all evolves here. Robb, how about you?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would just add on that there's been a couple of client or prospect interactions that I've had in the last couple of days. And one guy, I was out on the golf course and he had to correct himself. He says, the one thing I love about this COVID environment, that's what he said to me. And then he had to stop himself and say, well, wait a minute, maybe I shouldn't say that. But it was around this topic that it had kind of forced us to fast forward into what was going to come eventually, right? Some of this online selling, and he was in the finance world. So, he's watching stocks and different things. And then the other one was a company that had actually had to lay off about 40 of their 150 person workforce. And this wasn't the owner, it was the next level, and very, again, optimistic about what they were going to be able to achieve with less. And the fact that the folks, and I think Todd mentioned this at the beginning, that some of these folks that are being furloughed, weren't too productive, maybe. It's a hard thing to say, but to some extent it has, you better raise your game or it's going to be tougher to play, right? And so I think those are some positive things that I'll just kind of, if we're going to talk about the positive things, obviously we could find some negatives too, but I think companies need to also accelerate what they're doing. My comment that I had kind of thought about prior was that, if you're already ahead of the game and you're focused on culture and communication is really good in your company, you're going to be able to execute these new things and keep up with the change that's occurring. If you're not, you better get going, and jump on quickly, or you're going to get left in the dust.
Yeah, I agree with that last statement because things are not going back to the way they used to be. So you really need to be in the mindset of evolving and changing and learning during this time frame, and just doing a bit of reinventing.
Yeah, and get rid of that mental block. To your point, somebody said it, but we have this limiting belief that you can't sell. Todd said it. That that you can't sell virtually, or you can't do something a certain way. And I think any limiting belief we have, we should try to do away with. I think as a coach, you know what I mean? It's like, don't let those thoughts get in your way. So
having said all that, I mean, there are some realities we need to address. If I've got a sales organization that was highly relational, highly face-to-face, and that's what they've been doing for 20 years, I've now asked them to get on the phone, to pull up a web conference, to figure out the technology, to change the way I engage virtually, et cetera. So I agree with Rob. We need to get rid of that limiting belief, but we also have to equip our sales team with some new skill sets that they can work with.
Yeah, and be patient with that as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we've had some really good sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna pile on to what Rob and Shannon said, and particularly just that whole limiting belief. And then what I'm picking up on what you're saying, Shannon, is we have to a certain degree, be sensitive that they're having to not only shift what they do, but who they are.
Yeah,
because
that's right.
So long. I mean, I've been a seller for years and years, and this whole relationship face to face, whether it's shaking hands and being, dinners and being together and whatnot, that sort of defined who I was. And now we were having to help them transition that. That's just how you did it. You can still be this relational person.
Right.
It's just, to your point, it's the skills and the activities that you're going to utilize to do that, and help them through that. And it's interesting, just the last thing I'll say in that regard is more and more often the last few months, I've been working with salespeople on their personal brand. And I had not done that in the past. And it plays right to that is, what is your personal brand? What is the problem you solve? Forget about how you do it. Let's focus on that. Then we will bridge to how you actually do it. But let's get focused on that. And it's almost as if it re-energizes them around, I think what you're saying, Shannon, is helping them make that transition to, a new way of working. And that's a human element of what we all do, right? Yeah, it's you almost have to mourn for the loss, in a sense, of the way things were, and embrace what's going forward.
Yeah, I really like the notion of reinventing yourself, having to rebrand yourself, because that's really what we have to do to survive and to come out of this ahead. It's really like that. So now we're going to shift a little bit here, and we're going to bring in some of the questions that our attendees have. And I've got one here that says, what are the steps to take with trust and the customer experience if your service category is in a general not known by the customer or misperceived? So, okay, with that, I am going to start out with Shannon on that one.
Yeah, if I understand the question correctly, if the clients that I'm working with don't necessarily understand the value that I bring in the sector that I work in, or I misperceive, maybe there's a value I provide, but for whatever reason, the market perception is wrong. I'll go back to what I said before. It's talking to my customers. Misperception is overcome by communication. And so if my clients perceive my brand incorrectly and the value I bring to them, then that's something I have to solve by talking to them. And there's a variety of ways to do that. I mean, there's the in our business, we do a lot of phone interviews to collect feedback, but it's also building a relationship at the same time. We also do face-to-face interviews, strategic interviews with business leaders. That's again about collecting feedback from our clients, but also building a relationship at the same time. And so for me, I'll always go back to, do I know my customers well enough? Do they know me? And if the answer is no, the only solution to that is to ask them.
What if it's like a new unknown business category, if you will, or service category that is not known by the customer? And so you're bringing basically an unknown to the table.
Yeah,
I suppose it kind of fits into the same thing.
Yeah, maybe it's more communication at that point. But if they don't understand the value, we need to communicate it to them. And how do you, what is the emotional need that you're trying to meet? What is the experience they want to have? What is the problem you're trying to solve for them? And I don't think you can do any more than being exceptional at communicating how you make their life better, how you solve their problem, how you deliver an experience, an emotion that you want to deliver. It's communication.
Yeah, the benefit of the benefit. So Todd, I'd like to hear your perspective on that one.
Yeah, and I liked what Shannon had to say, and it's possible I may miss the mark a little bit on this one, but there's a word in there that I'm just zeroing in on, and that's trust. And if I miss the mark, I miss the mark. But what I've found, and time and time again, is that customers are going to evaluate trust in 3 dimensions: our sincerity, our reliability, and our capability. And the challenge with that is, if you're an unknown, is it does come back to the messaging and the stories that you tell, whether it be success stories or case studies or customer testimonials or whatever it may be. But I always, when I'm working with sales teams or trying to build a customer experience that sort of exudes trust, what I'm always coming back to is, we look at the continuum of the customer journey. How are we actually what are we doing to actually show up in a sincere manner, prove that we're reliable, and then prove that we're capable? And usually there's moments of truth in that journey, particularly at those moments of truth. Where are we showing up being sincere and authentic? Where are we being reliable? And where are we demonstrating our capability? And for that matter, where are we not? Because if we're not, they're not going to advance in the journey. So that's how I sort of tie the trust piece into the customer experience, is along those 3 dimensions. Seems simple, but it's pretty amazing how often we do get judged on those 3 dimensions.
That's a good point, Todd. And if you're a new brand and you're trying to educate your market on the value you provide, you don't have a lot of forgiveness if you don't deliver what you say you can. So you better get it right. You better do what you say you're going to do right out of the gate.
Yeah.
Definitely. It's much more difficult to repair something than it is to do it right. So Rob, how about you? Do you have some thoughts to bring to the table?
I would just add just a little something maybe that on top of there that the I'm going to lose my thought, but it had to do with establishing trust. Well, I see. The idea that when you go to market with the product or whatever, you start with a question. You're going to have to, like what Shannon was saying, you need to ask a lot of questions. And I think software development has kind of taught us something in the sales process, Todd. And Todd's kind of like, it seems like you're the sales guy of the 3 of us. I mean, we're all sales guys, but thinking a lot about process. But I like the idea. What? I like the idea of iterating. So I go out and I try a message. I listen to what I ask good questions in a conversation with a potential client, and then my next call is different, right? And I just keep iterating until I find that message that's resonating. And I think that's the way software is done. I mean, I remember we bought a POS software from an early kind of person that nobody had ever seen that, you know, back in the 90s. And we became their, and we just loved it. They'd ask us questions. What do you like? What don't you like? And they just kept making it better. And it kind of made it perfect for us, you know? And I think we need to do that more. As I'm a consultant, you know, that, you know, the needs and the pain points and the things that bother our clients and they need help with, the needs and wants that they have change. And
you liked it when they asked you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. I did. Yeah. And I think that's okay. Right. It's a conversation. It doesn't have to be always me telling and selling. I need to listen. That's all I'd add.
Yeah, no, that's good. Before we kind of wrap up here for today, is there anything that either anyone wants to kind of chime in or add on anything?
Thank you, Alan.
Feeling pretty good?
Time. It's a great time.
All right. Yeah, that's good. So we're gonna start wrapping things up here. We're coming to the end of our hour here, and I'd like to thank our panelists so much for being here today and sharing their insights and wisdom. And I'd like to thank everyone for attending this ThriveCast episode. And I hope you enjoyed the conversation. There's a lot of really good stuff covered, a lot of good insights, a lot of good ideas. If you have any follow-up questions or questions we were not able to address due to time limitations, please send them to info@consciousbranding.com and we'll respond to you. The ones that we captured in the chat, we'll get those out there as well so that we can answer those for you. We'll also be sending you a link to the recorded episode along with some bonus materials to keep the momentum around this conversation moving forward for your business. By all means, feel free to share that with your peers and other business owners you think would be interested. And if you have any ideas for any future topics you'd like us to cover, please let us know at info@consciousbranding.com. And I look forward to seeing you all back here. I really enjoy these conversations and learning something new all the time. And remember, you create your world. So believe in your vision, drive it with purpose, and above all, take action. So until next time, be remarkable.